Sometimes we want to get summary statistics out of our databases in Xano, and sometimes that's going to be across records, and that's where Xano's built-in aggregation functionality can help. But sometimes we want data that's within a record. Like we can have we have complicated data types inside a given table. So I might have a number might be one field, a date, a timestamp might be another field, but another one can just be an array. And a useful thing to ask about arrays are summary statistics like, how long are they? This might have a length of 2, this might have a length of 1, this might have a length of 2, and maybe that is the kind of information I want to be returning to whoever is asking me for information on the other side of my function or API endpoint. So how do we do this? PostgreSQL has something called array length that we could use for this kind of query in a more coding environment. In a Xano environment, we're going to need to set up a loop inside our function stack. So to do this, we're going to go open up functions. I'm going to go to this function I built for this purpose, which is called query array length. And it has a function stack. And so I'm going to ask for everything from my JSON test table, which is relatively straightforward and just sort of, and I also, just for the purpose of simplicity, used customize over here in order to only send back the ID and the tags text. I can send back any other fields I want. It doesn't really matter. But I thought that might be a little clearer and allow it just to be the default. I don't have any of the other advanced settings turned on right now. You could, but they don't matter for this demo. Now, what I'm going to do is loop over this JSON test 1. I'm not going to loop over each item within it. I'm going to loop over the count of it in order to go just pull the index of where I am inside that table. So the first record would be 0, the second record would be 1, third record will be 2. And then for each of those records, we're going to say, let's find out what the individual item is that's inside that record. And I'm going to say, hey, okay, I'm going to call that item based on a get filter from JSON test 1, which is all the records that got pulled back from my database query. Give me index, in this case 0 for the first one, and don't worry about the default. And call that item. So that will give me all the records, in this case ID and tags text, that I pulled from that particular table for that particular row. Now, this gets to the question I really want to answer, which is how long is a tags text field? And to do that, I say, well, from inside item, I'm going to run a get filter and say, give me from inside the item the field that's called tags text. And then I run a second filter on it called count that gives me the length of the array, the number of items inside that array. So for the one where there are 2 items, give me a 2. Where there's 1 item, give me a 1. Where there's nothing, give me a 0, etc. Now that I've got that count in hand, what I want to do is take the item, which I had pulled from that particular record, right, the one that had the ID and has tags text, and just add it on so that now it will return this additional field. And to do that, I use the set filter. So I'm going to say set item back to item modified using set with just tell it that I want to set count to be whatever I put in my count variable. And this is something we can change. I'll demonstrate that in just a second. But this can be, you could call it likes, you could call it count, you could call it length, whatever is most useful. And you can do, of course, this for any of your array-based records. And then finally, having modified this given record, we say, let's make sure that the original list of records is going to contain this. So that, hey, I have the JSON test 1, which is my big old list of all my records. I'm going to set that at position index, in this case back in position 0, I want to use my newly modified item. This is important because often things in PHP, which Xano uses under the covers, are being copied by value instead of being copied by reference. And to make sure that you're going to be updating the original data set, you want to be copying that back in. And this will then make sure that your list of records now includes your count. And then you just return your full data set at the end. So if this has done its job, what I should get is a field called ID, a field called tags text, and a field called count that will just tell me how long the whole thing is. And I can do run and debug. No particular arguments will go in, and I get exactly what I'm looking for. ID of 1, tags text with a count of 2, tags text just the one thing, I don't count of 1, tags text, count of 2. Now, to illustrate my point I was making before, like I was calling this count, I don't have to call it count. I can click into this again and I can say, you know what? I want to call it length instead. You can call it whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You can call it Robert. And you say update, and you can say save. And now if I were to go run this again, you see it put it into the field called link, so I have complete control over it. If you want to remove things, you can do that too by just saying I want to, just remove tags text from your object and do whatever other manipulation you see fit. It's not quite as efficient as just doing it directly inside the database, but for the vast majority of applications, it's going to be fast enough and allows you to get this done all inside the nice no-code environment.